Welcome to today's TAFE Talks. I'm Teresa Schmidt, the Executive Director of Policy and Governance at TAFE Directors Australia, and today's topic is TAFE Centres of Excellence Powering Modern Manufacturing. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the different lands upon which we meet today. I'm coming to you from Gubbi Gubbi country, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us in the discussion today. If you would like to introduce yourself and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that you are on, please feel free to do so in the chat. Wanya, welcome to you all. In today's session, we will explore the opportunities and challenges associated with modern manufacturing. We're going to look at how TAFE Centres of Excellence are working with industry and education stakeholders to help shape the future manufacturing workforce. Our discussion today is an important one, with the manufacturing sector flagged as an economic development priority for every state and territory in Australia. Today's TAFE Talks will delve into the sector's opportunities and challenges and how TAFE Manufacturing Centres of Excellence are working with key stakeholders, including jobs and skills councils, to develop solutions and leverage opportunities. So let me begin by introducing today's speakers. Firstly, we will have Paul Williams, who is the Executive Director of Manufacturing Workforce Intelligence at Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance, the Jobs and Skills Council. Paul will provide an overview of the current manufacturing industry and training landscape, and he's well equipped to do so with a long history in TAFE, including in TAFE New South Wales and New Zealand. Joining Paul today are leaders from the TAFE New South Wales Manufacturing Centres of Excellence. Firstly, we have Helen Fremlin, Program Manager of the TAFE New South Wales Manufacturing Centres of Excellence, who will kick off for the team. Helen is the Manager of Strategic Initiatives, leading the TAFE New South Wales program in the design and the stand-up of 3 Centres of Excellence. Helen has more than 15 years in TAFE, beginning as a teacher and later leading the delivery of significant statewide educational projects and strategic initiatives. Welcome to Helen. We will then hear from Dr. Juliette Anich, the Senior Manager of Strategic Partnerships. With 15 years' experience in tertiary education and program design, Juliette leads national partnership strategy, industry engagement, and the development of innovative manufacturing training solutions across Australia. Prior to joining TAFE New South Wales, Juliette worked in academic roles in industrial design, leading transformational student programs, curriculum reform, and nationally recognised research projects. Juliette's work has been honoured with multiple national and international awards. Also joining us is Dr. Mike Keppel, the Senior Manager of Curriculum. Mike collaborates with industry to deliver micro-skills, micro-credentials and higher apprenticeships. He leads curriculum transformation, learning design, assessment, staff development and blended and online learning. Mike has held senior academic leadership roles at 7 universities, has an impressive publishing track record, and is recognised as a thought leader, delivering more than 50 keynote addresses in 20 countries. Importantly, Mike is committed to advancing innovative curriculum and student learning. We will also hear from John O'Neill, who's the Senior Manager, Operations and Integration at TAFE New South Wales Manufacturing Centres of Excellence. Originally a mechanical engineer, John's education journey started as an educator of mechanical design before moving on to technical management roles within advanced manufacturing, research and educational development. John now leads student support, training delivery and specialist facilities teams for the Manufacturing Centres of Excellence. Before I hand over to Paul to kick us off, I wanted to let you know that today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to everyone who registered for this TAFE Talk session and on the TDA website. Closed captioning is also available for this event. If you have any questions that you would like to pose to our speakers today, please use the Q&A box throughout the session and we will come back to those at the end. You can use the chat for discussion during the session, but we won't be monitoring the chat for questions. Please use the Q&A function. It now gives me great pleasure to hand over to Paul from the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance Jobs and Skills Council to kick off today's discussion. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, and thank you, Teresa, too. And thanks to TDA and to TAFE New South Wales for arranging today's forum. Firstly, for those of you who had shown up to hear from Sharon Robertson, the CEO of the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance, I do apologise that you unfortunately will hear from me. Sharon has been caught up in a board meeting, which she did try to get out of, but it is her board, or our board rather, and so that was rather difficult. So she asked me to come along today. And can I also just acknowledge that I'm in Melbourne today, so I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. So I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. The focus for our comments and my comments today is really about collaboration as much as it is about manufacturing and the future of skills and work in manufacturing. It is an incredibly diverse sector, as I'm sure people realise, and the collaboration between Jobs and Skills Councils, TAFEs, and the Centres of Excellence is a critical one. We are, of course, in the manufacturing sector, very, very reliant upon trade and technical skills, and will continue to be so. However, we're equally looking at growing demand for higher level training at and above Certificate 3 post-trade and beyond, and therefore these collaborations are incredibly important. Both signals are strong, that is to say, the signal for more trade and technical training and the signal for more higher level education and training. And in that sense, the discussion of skills first or a harmonised tertiary system makes a lot of sense to us. That framing is reflected in what we hear when we consult with industry. Similarly, there is strong support for the many centres of excellence, and thank you to TDA. I think the number was 14 that we saw in your newsletter earlier this week, and across all states and territories. So, we're a national organisation, and we have I think five or six, I'll just do the count, partnerships or developing partnerships with the Centres for Excellence. So in Queensland, we are working with the Centre for Clean Energy Batteries. In South Australia, the Centre for National Security. We're working alongside the Defence and Industry Skills Centre in WA, and also the Future for Housing Construction at Melbourne Polytechnic. So we are very engaged and very supportive of the centres, and it strikes me that the diversity of those centres and the number that have the manufacturing focus reflects, again, the diversity of the sector in Australia. These partnerships all for the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance as a national organisation fit within and amplify the focus of government's policy, and perhaps particularly the Future Made framework. One of the drivers, not the only driver, but a significant driver. And in the context of Teresa, your introduction, a big part of what we do in this for Jobs and Skills Councils is to work as closely as we can with industry, associations, members, unions, employer groups, and on the ground to try to provide, I guess, navigational advice, stewardship, a sense of priorities and direction. And the workforce plan is one of the most important things that we produce. We produce one each and every year. We've kicked off the production of this year's workforce plan, and we will be engaging with employers and unions, associations, RTOs, and governments shortly to develop, redevelop, republish the workforce plan for 2026. Now, I don't want people to think that I'm going to go through all 75 pages of the 2025 workforce plan, but there are some issues that it strikes me are very relevant to this forum, and particularly to the other speakers. The two that I thought I might just focus on in the first instance, two themes rather that I might focus on in the first instance, is really the theme of circular design and the circular economy more generally, whether that's about transitioning to cleaner energy, or about reducing resource footprint, or the resource use, or the value added through those resources, or even waste management and remanufacturing. What we have seen through our consultation is there is very strong demand for training that supports circular practices, and particularly circular design. So the end-to-end piece that's necessary to realize across supply chains often the kind of relationships that you need across, or actually between and across firms. So that's the first theme that's very strong, and we expect it to remain strong. The second, and I guess it's strongly related, is cleaner manufacturing. So smarter devices, automation, digitization, all of the technology that is present in many firms, but perhaps not necessarily implemented in a way that permits the kind of power of those technologies to be used. So I'm sure others here will be aware of scenarios where firms have the technology in their operations, but they're not necessarily utilizing it to its full advantage. So therefore, the capability that might be available and the transition to more clean processes isn't being fully realized. Again, that's a skill or workforce challenge that we are identifying and are looking to partner with others on. Which brings me to one of the points that I think is very important that we make as a Jobs and Skills Council. The workforce plan is an incredibly important resource, and we go about it in a serious and methodical manner. We don't, however, think that we're the only ones that know what's going on, and we're very aware of the intelligence and the networks of many other organizations, which is why these collaborations are so important. And at any given point in time, the workforce plan really reflects what we're hearing in that period. So for us, we'd closed down the consultation on the 2025 workforce plan, starting to think about the 2026 workforce plan, and then there was very significant investment in defence. So if there's a third theme that I could just allude to, but perhaps not get into too much detail about at this stage, that is the industries of defence, or the defence industries, are another major driver of demand, and obviously reflected in the focus of several of the Centres of Excellence. I'm mindful of time, so I'll press on. With regards to the TAFE New South Wales Centre, can I just make the point that what was very strongly evident in our collaboration with TAFE New South Wales was the extent to which the focus was additionality. What's the new, what's the extended scope that can be realised? What are the skills that are currently outside of the training system, outside of the national training system, that through the partnership we could realise? And so that was a important part of the way we work together, and we'd like to see that as a framing for all of the collaborations as they develop, and as I say, several of them are quite new. I'll skip ahead in the interests of time. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the goal that we have through these collaborations reflects the comment I made earlier, that while it is our role to know through the workforce plan what industry is focused on, it is the co-design, it's the collaboration that means we're leveraging the insights from across the entire VET sector, and that is critical to how we support the differences in the regions, but also support the industry more generally with fundamental and transferable skills. I want to make two quick points and then I'll conclude. With the workforce plan that we are working on at the moment, one of the things that I hope that people see a little bit differently from perhaps in the past is more of a solutions focus. And two brief points on that. We've just published, and thank you very much again to TDA, some research that we did on apprenticeship outcomes. That was an important piece of work that we did across all jurisdictions, looking at the factors that are most tightly correlated with non-completion, as well as those that are correlated with completion. We are trying to move more and more towards the solution focus rather than just endlessly describing the challenges. Second point is that still in the apprenticeship space, we did a lot of research on attitudes to apprenticeships, because the number of people starting them continues to decline in a way that is challenging to all. And so there's a website that we've set up, and a bunch of research that sits in behind that, called Make It Manufacturing. And what we've found is that with better messaging, we can actually shift people's perceptions from the view that they might have, which is it's dirty and it's not safe, through to actually this is clean. Manufacturing is more like manufacturing employers are more likely to offer permanent and long-term employment, features that the research tells us young people are very motivated by. So look, in the interest of time, I will stop there and hand to Helen. The collaboration is the part of this forum that we are very grateful to lean into and highlight, because we can see the power of that, and particularly with the public providers and TAFE, the various TAFE institutes. Helen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul, and our thanks also to the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance for your incredible support and ongoing support of the MCoE program. So hopefully I've just shared my screen, because we are going to talk you through today some of the elements of the program that we believe will be of interest, a little bit of background, the innovations that we're making across our industry partnerships, education and curriculum, and in our delivery. So we will start in the beginning. So in the beginning, the Manufacturing Centres of Excellence were initially announced as a New South Wales government election commitment back in 2023. This was to address the skills shortages across the manufacturing industry. And later that year, it became a joint initiative between the Australian government and the New South Wales government under the National Skills Agreement. So TAFE New South Wales are establishing 3 manufacturing centres of excellence, and that's Net Zero Manufacturing in the Hunter, Advanced Manufacturing in Western Sydney, and Heavy Manufacturing in the Illawarra. And I'll just note there that the manufacturing centres of excellence aren't physical buildings. It's a flagship educational model under the National Skills Agreement. There is going to be an uplift to existing training facilities, and we will be deploying mobile training units to reach regional and remote learners, but it's the model. The Manufacturing Centres of Excellence are a model that will be supported by a collective effort from TAFE New South Wales, universities, industries, the industry bodies, to develop training programs that build a skilled manufacturing workforce. The Manufacturing Centres of Excellence have a unique opportunity to shape the future of the manufacturing industry. Supported by extensive consultation and applied research, the centres will deliver on the Commonwealth Government priorities by creating innovative approaches to education. So these approaches aim to increase engagement, retention, and completion for all learners. We have a specific focus on key equity groups, and some ways that we'll achieve this are by addressing intersectionality across equity groups. We've also got the pillars shown there that here demonstrate the ways we're bringing that to life through a community-driven plan, through understanding the context of the gender divide, through educating employers to help them support their apprentices, through outreach into regional areas, and through deploying applied research, which Mike will touch on one of the programs later, but we have 2 active applied research programs. The TAFE New South Wales Centres of Excellence education model is designed to do a few things, and there's a few things on screen here, but it's been designed to attract students into existing pathways. It's been designed to upskill existing students and qualified workers in areas not currently available in existing qualifications. And it's designed to provide opportunities for students to progress into a higher education pathway within an apprenticeship model. And that's the higher apprenticeship that we're working with designing at the moment. So the three different offerings that complement the education ecosystem in manufacturing that we're deploying are the micro skills, the two types of micro credential offerings that you see there, and the higher apprentices. And there is more information about all of the offerings and what we've got available on the TAFE New South Wales MCoE website. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Juliet to talk us through the partnerships.
Thank you so much. Just checking that everyone could hear me. All right. Modern manufacturing, as Paul kindly pointed out, is incredibly broad, complex, interconnected, and the sector itself is actually moving at different speeds, which is largely a reflection of the diversity in technology adoption. Addressing the skills in the sector that support the transformation is actually just too big for one organisation to solve in isolation. At the Manufacturing Centres of Excellence, the partnership model is built on a simple principle. To achieve the workforce transformation that we'd like to see in manufacturing, we need an ecosystem response. So when we talk about partnerships in modern manufacturing, we're really talking about how we work together to solve problems that no single organisation can solve alone. At the MCoE, partnerships aren't just an add-on, they're a core infrastructure. We use partnerships to validate what skills are needed, both now and into the future, in order to co-design the learning rather than just reviewing at the end, to create real pathways between vocational to higher and industry, and to accelerate innovation in both delivery and content. Our role isn't just to connect organisations, but it's to orchestrate alignment between that workforce demand, the education capability, and learner pathways. And that alignment is what makes the CoE model fundamentally different from traditional engagement. So what does this ecosystem actually look like in practice? So we operate across three interconnected partnership layers, each playing a slightly distinct role in order to shape the workforce outcomes. First, there's industry, which helps us to define what matters most, the skills priorities, the emerging technologies, the workforce capability gaps, and the changing nature of the roles, including the upskilling that's required to support them. Second is the universities, who help us understand the broader sector shifts in terms of technology, industry direction, and student markets. And they enable us to develop credible articulation pathways, align academic integrity with applied learning, and support lifelong learning journeys. And thirdly is our system partners, and this includes our JSCs, government, peak bodies, and research organisations. And these partners help us connect workforce needs with policy settings and innovation agendas. So the real value here isn't just one relationship, it's how these relationships interconnect, creating an ecosystem where intelligence, education, workforce priorities are continually able to inform each other. So now I'd like to share with you two case studies on how we're making this work in our project. The first one is our collaboration with the Additive Manufacturing CRC, which stands for Commonwealth Research Corporation. Additive manufacturing was identified early as a priority area for our project, and because of its rapid adoption and its impact across multiple parts of the manufacturing sector, we knew we needed targeted industry engagement to inform our response. However, we were super conscious of engagement fatigue and duplication. And so instead of going forth and creating a standalone advisory structure, we identified and partnered directly with the Additive Manufacturing CRC to establish and build upon those established industry networks. Through this engagement, we are now testing our assumption that there is a capability gap where industry has a strong design capability in additive manufacturing, but weaker in the readiness in production, quality assurance, and certification. And so we're actually linking a potential curriculum problem that we could solve through curriculum design into an ecosystem problem that we can solve collaboratively together. And this partnership will allow us to bring the CRC insights together with real industry demand, validate those workforce capability gaps, and design a targeted micro-credential pathway and align progression from trade to technician to engineering roles. And this is the partnership model doing exactly what it's designed to do, which is translating ecosystem intelligence into structured learning outcomes. But identifying the skills is really only half the story. The next question is, how do we design learning that's flexible enough to respond to a changing landscape? Which brings us to our next example, which is our microcredential in robotic welding. Now, welding is a tried and tested and successful course offered by TAFE New South Wales BAU, delivered to meet ISO-identified capabilities. But the technology in the market is moving faster than ISO or the training packages have evolved to. We have had partnerships that help us identify this emerging development and the skills that are needed to meet that. But the next challenge that we're facing is to design a learning that can quickly respond without sacrificing structure or quality. And this is where micro-credentials become a really powerful innovation engine. They allow us to test emerging industry skills demand, validate the learning concepts with partners, and build stackable pathways and inform how broader training can evolve. But the value here isn't in the framework. The devil always is in the detail between the identification of the need and the way that we're going to deliver it. So the robotic welding microcredential was developed through close industry collaboration. The capability gaps were validated directly with our partners. The curriculum was shaped around real equipment and workflows, and the delivery model was designed for flexibility. But this still is kind of an abstract innovation. And the value here isn't just delivering an industry validated training, although that's always great. It's actually being able to make this microcredential act as an insights instrument through real life prototyping of the validity of training to a change in technology and capturing that data to inform meaningful decisions to upgrade potential ISO or training packages. And this is where we see the partnerships stop being just a concept around relationship building, but become a workforce capability in action. I'll now pass over to Mike to talk about the curriculum.
Well, thank you, Juliette. I think it shows the synergy we've got in terms of what we're doing. I'm going to focus on innovative educational design. We are a manufacturing centre of excellence, and being a centre of excellence, I think we have to look at the innovation aspect and push that further. We have to push boundaries in how we design as we're going through. Really important to look at then the educational model that we're examining. We look at, as been looked at before, the micro skills, the micro credentials, and the 2 higher apprenticeships. What's very important about these is the fact that they, in the ecosystem, they provide a pathway. The micro skills are 100% digital learning and not assessed in terms of non-accredited. You've got the NNR micro credentials, which I'll go into further, that looks at the idea that there more than 1 hour of actually content that the student would partake in. You've got the 2 higher apprenticeships that are going to be the diploma and the associate degree. But one thing we are doing is actually making micro-credentials out of each unit of competency in each subject. So in reality, we've got about 74 micro-credentials that we're going to be offering, and they will be for credit transfer as we're going through. Might go to the next slide there, if we could there, Helen. So these are some of the micro skills that we've developed so far. We've got 13 that are live at the moment. These are some of the titles that you can see there: advanced manufacturing careers, renewable manufacturing careers, maths, which is so important across all the curriculum that we're looking at. The literacy foundations, which are essential. There's one on hydrogen there, and supporting the apprentice. Other ones that we've looked at are looking at digital essentials for manufacturing, supporting your First Nations apprentice, and looking at discovering manufacturing careers in welding and fabrication. So this will set the stage, as Juliette did with robotic welding, in setting the stage with the micro skill going through to a micro credential. So we'll just go to the next slide there. What I wanted to look at here, these are the NNR micro credentials. So these are delivered online or face-to-face or blended. The current micro credentials that we're looking at are generative design and analysis that has gone through 3 or 4 different cohorts in terms of students. We're looking at design thinking for sustainable manufacturing, and introduction to digital technologies, which is beginning as we speak. In production, we've got the robotic welding, and we've almost completed this, and we're looking at supplementing this with equipment as we go through. The other ones that we're looking at are the Maths for Manufacturing 1 and Maths for Manufacturing 2. And again, the importance of maths in the curriculum going forward. So next slide, if we could. These are the micro-credentials looking at the units of competency just for the diploma. And what we're doing, they're a unit of competency. They're one of the units that is being developed, but they're being made into a micro-credential. If students undertake one unit of competency, they get a statement of attainment. They can use it then for credit transfer going into the diploma. The diploma is actually 19 units as we're going through. So again, we've got different pathways that students can go through in terms of that. And you can see the 3 offerings that we've got there at the moment going forward. Go through to the next slide if we could. So what I wanted to do here in closing the loop is the Applied Research Project. This is a project we're doing with Griffith University. The focus here is in really looking at the co-design of a real-world business problem. And they're interviewing different businesses throughout New South Wales to see what are some of the problems that we could address. What they're looking at then is we're looking at getting the students involved. And so we're looking at a co-design of an applied research student learning experience. We're doing that through a micro-credential and facilitation with teachers. But there's also an uplift of the teachers and the capability uplift at TAFE. And so it's a great model to actually close the loop in what we're doing in terms of the MCoE and the applied research. They're looking at megatrends. They're looking at a variety of different aspects as well. And we're in the early stages of the research, but we are presenting a paper up at the AFTRA conference that's in Brisbane in April in looking at the problem-solving idea. So next slide there, if we could. Underpinning all of this, and I think I touched on this last year when I presented, but I still believe that design principles or educational principles should be driving what we do, at least in the development of resources. We develop our resources so they can be used in any mode, whether they're face-to-face, blended, or online. Some of the big principles I'll just touch on at the moment are looking at the idea of outcome-based education, and that looks at the idea of learning outcomes and constructive alignment, which is so important throughout what we do in learning and teaching. The flexible learning pathways we've touched on already, but they're very important in terms of going from a micro skill to a micro cred through to units and to subjects, but also to articulating out into other pathways as well. I'll go on to the next slide there, if we could, and look at some of the other principles, and we will provide these slides for you. The authentic assessment is a key one as well. Looking at real-world problems, using projects, using problems is so essential, and making it so it's applicable to the workforce and to the apprenticeship that they're working in or to the job they're going to be working in. The other big one in terms of what we're doing in terms of the educational design is looking at utilising learning designers to provide the backbone for the design of what we're doing as we go through. So I'll just go to the next slide. Underpinning everything that we do is a design process. For those who know about instructional design or learning design, this is based on the ADDIE model, which is, and looks at basically some stages that we go through. So this assures the quality of what we're doing in the educational space. Now, we develop the resources so that they can be then utilised by teachers in different modes of learning and teaching, but they provide a rich format to allow this to occur. So what I'll do is I'll just hand over to John, who will continue the conversation. So over to you, John.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the introduction earlier, Teresa. I'm Joe Neal. I am the operational team leader at the MCoEs. Currently, our team's doing a lot of great work in a lot of different areas, but this afternoon, I wanted to spend some time talking about our training delivery in particular and sharing some information there. So Our innovations in this space are focused on 3 key themes. Firstly, exploring flexible pathways into manufacturing training for learners. Secondly, developing modern training facilities with improved accessibility so more learners can participate in our training. And thirdly, developing training that is integrated into existing training systems while collaborating with experts to support our student outcomes. As you all know, TAFE New South Wales already delivers manufacturing training, particularly in the Certificate 2 through to the diploma level of qualifications. And our goal at the COEs is to build upon that strong foundation while creating additional entry and progression opportunities for students. We already deliver short online programs in the MCoEs, the micro skills and micro credentials that Mike talked to earlier. And these allow students and employers to explore modern manufacturing topics and some of the emerging technologies in this space. As Mike also mentioned, we're already developing further study training pathways that build upon existing vocational skills and support workers to upskill into new and emerging technologies. We're aware that learners may be coming to us from diverse backgrounds, from the school system, perhaps transitioning from other industries, or even coming to us from the university pathways to get more practical skills. And it's important for us to consider these things when we offer these training systems to ensure that we can access as many people as possible. Finally, providing that flexible entry and exit point is key. So we need to make sure we provide those options to learners as well as to industry to ensure we meet their needs. Our second theme is expanding access to our manufacturing training. So as Helen mentioned earlier, we have 3 key campuses that will host our more advanced technologies for the COEs. Newcastle focused on net zero, Western Sydney on advanced manufacturing, and Wollongong with technologies to support heavy industry. While these main campuses are currently under development to support our more advanced practical training, we're working through the practicalities of what the new systems look like, and we're exploring that internally. We're also introducing 2 mobile training units, which will allow us to take these emerging technologies and these new practical training opportunities on the road to reach communities where access to our campuses may be limited or may not be ideal for our learners and for our industries. In addition, we're working with a range of partners, internal and external, to expand our training delivery. So we're not just looking at our campuses and our MTUs, we're also looking at opportunities elsewhere to try and reach as many learners as possible and empower as much of the manufacturing sector as we can. As I said earlier, while some of our skills may require specialized facilities and equipment, many of our programs could be delivered through hybrid or even remote models. So we're also exploring that and trying to provide those options to learners. Our last training delivery element is built around collaboration. So the Centres of Excellence are working closely from the very beginning with our internal faculties inside the manufacturing sector or manufacturing sections inside TAFE. We're also working with all of the TAFE campuses, all of the TAFE faculties, and a whole bunch of external partners, as Juliet was talking about before. We're doing this to ensure our offerings build upon current qualifications and approaches, and they create new opportunities for students and teachers alike. This will allow our training to integrate into the existing training systems, while also supporting the manufacturing teaching capability we're building in the long term. And as I said earlier, we also collaborate with industry specialists, the universities, and visiting experts to support these emerging technologies in particular, while taking our existing teachers and communities on the journey. And what does that all mean? Where does it all come together? So a practical example, as Juliet mentioned earlier, is our micro-credential around robotic welding. So the course has been developed, and at the moment, we're still developing these new facilities. So right now, we're working with those partners, with our internal teams and teaching teams, and trying to find ways that we could potentially use equipment that may not exist yet inside TAFE and may not have campuses yet that see the long-term delivery, but try and get these skills out to industry as quickly as we can. So we're trying to explore these things, get these skills out to industry as soon as we can, with a vision for a long-term integration to ensure that we can address both ends of that spectrum. In closing, modern manufacturing requires new technologies, but it also requires access and pathways for learners to engage with those technologies, as well as robust structures to support those things in the long term. At the Centres of Excellence, we're trying to address all those things from the beginning and keen to keep working with everybody in that respect. Thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to Helen.
Thanks, Paul, Helen, Juliet, Mike, and John. That was a really engaging conversation about some of the interesting and important work that the Centres of Excellence are working on, and also thank you to Paul for providing that overview right at the beginning of our session to explore some of the challenges and opportunities that this sector faces. I think there's a few questions that we will want to respond to. One of these, I think, which is coming through as a theme, is thinking about the outcomes that you're producing. How are the manufacturing centres of excellence ensuring that those outcomes can be nationally reproduced or nationally networked or connected? So, for example, Andrew's just suggested that there might be a national TAFE working group to look at needs and training for defence industries, but you might have other examples of how you are distributing and disseminating these important outcomes nationally. So I'll hand over to you, Helen, to direct that question. It might even be something that comes up with your partnership with the JSCs as well, which Paul might be interested in responding to.
Thanks, Teresa, and thanks for the questions. There is a movement within the national network, and it's great to see emerging collaboration. I'm going to let Juliet start with this question and then invite Paul if there's anything further that he wants to add. Juliet.
Absolutely. So the question is around, I guess, delivery and the expansion of what we have to do. And I guess the first call is to make sure that consultation is at a national level, and that we're working with other COEs and are not reinventing what is currently in the market, but working within existing accreditation bodies to work to that. I think that the defence skills is a really interesting issue. There are 2 COEs that focus on this particular area. And so being able to work collaboratively across those institutions is really poignant to be able to support a national response.
And Paul, is there anything that you wanted to add there?
Very, very briefly, I think it's an important question. It's a significant sum of public funds invested in these centres, and they have an important role. I think that framing of additionality, complementary in their focus and joined up is critically important. Using the pipeline, if I can use that language, of the national training products to step people through into these other offerings, but making sure across the different centres of excellence where the scope does maybe not overlap, but is complementary, that those conversations are occurring. Certainly from a Jobs and Skills Council perspective, that's the approach that we want to take, and it's been a strong feature in the way that we've worked with TAFE New South Wales. So I think it is the right focus, and if I can make one other brief comment, and that is, it's not just about the additionality of program. I think we are the Jobs and Skills Council, jobs being the first part of the name. And so again, I think if we are focused on what are those jobs we're looking to support, and they may well be national, some may be more local, but over time they're bound to be national. I think that's another important way to ensure that we're collaborating with an outcome in mind, and that outcome is that more people are getting jobs, those jobs are meaningful, and we are supporting productive endeavours.
Thanks, Paul. I think further to that, just that national qualification integrity remains central, and that we're not seeking to bypass training packages or accredited pathways, that we're looking at the ecosystem as a whole and then seeking to identify the gaps and work with the pathways that go beyond or that may lead into the existing training structures. And that, I suppose, overall, the workforce development is an ecosystem activity and not a single provider solution. So we're working to actively avoid duplication in areas. We're looking to collaborate extensively, and that collaboration extends into universities as well. And that collaboration is really a core principle of our design. So we've got the goal to expand capability and not to duplicate anything that's already there. Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks, Helen, and to Juliet and Paul for answering that question so fully. I guess one of the emerging aspects of as part of the National Skills Agreement that we'll see more of this dissemination occur is also through the National TAFE network. And although it's early days yet, that is a key part of the dissemination and the nationalisation of the outcomes of the Centres of Excellence. So I think we'll hear more about that as that process comes to light and how that's all going to take place. But a lot of work being done at the moment to get some of these early wins in a way that can be accessible and transferable across multiple jurisdictions, and so that we can see that nationalisation. Okay, now we did talk, I heard that mentioned, Paul, you mentioned the importance of focusing on jobs. This is about jobs, and there's a question there from Lisa about how do we work with, and this will be directed for you, Helen, to point to whoever can best answer this. But you work with many different stakeholders, and how do you work with employment service providers or others that are working with those underserved groups who might be interested in the sector? So you had some slides there about how you're bringing people into the sector and the importance of reframing it as an attractive sector to work in. So I'll leave that to you to distribute to your guest there, Helen.
Thanks, Teresa. I think I'll start with the MCoE perspective and then let Paul pick up from the industry perspective. The MCoE have recently conducted an extensive community engagement activity across the areas that will be deploying our centres, and a part of that was actually reaching out to the organisations that have direct impact with community across those equity groups. So we've done a lot of listening, and we've heard about the barriers, and we've heard about the perceptions of manufacturing, and we've also heard some really important stories about the perspectives of youth and of women and of people with disabilities and of our equity group areas. And soon we'll be doing the same for an outreach and collaboration and connection with Aboriginal communities. But really important in those engagements was hearing from the representative bodies, and we certainly had those perspectives of community coming out. And we're working now to distill all of those inputs, as well as the inputs from a survey that was supported through the Department of Customer Service, where we had over 1,300 responses about the questions of the barriers and what's standing in between. So we're working with a lot of groups. We're working across lots of aspects in the community. We haven't targeted specifically unemployment networks at this stage, but certainly starting with those questions about barriers, and then hoping that we'll solve a lot of the issues as we go with some really targeted activities. Paul, do you want to take industry perspective further to that?
Thank you. Yes, and I'll just make two quick points. Firstly, I'm really attracted to the ecosystem language. It's language I think is really helpful for us all to think about our unique or particular contribution as a complementary set of functions. Probably the first thing I should say is that the unique role, or the particular role, that Jobs and Skills Councils try to play is to represent industry as best we're able, the voice of industry, stewardship for industry, industry defined both in terms of employers and unions, and I think that's a vital part of the architecture for us and what Commonwealth and state ministers and departments expect. So a lot of the focus in terms of collaboration for Jobs and Skills Councils is with members, with the unions and employer groups, and with the individual enterprises, to try to make sure that we are understanding and representing the current requirements. There's a lot of data and modelling. The data collections are generally lag data. They are very important, but I guess the second point I want to make is that a lot of the focus of our collaboration now is what's the next most demanding set of requirements that we need to work with, which is why this forum's so important, because we will always start by promoting national training, and the significant public investment in national training is the strength of the system. That is not instead of these other requirements as the nature of work changes. So the partnership is first with industry, but then the collaboration rather, and the partnership is first with industry, but then with the sector itself. We can exhort we can exhort people to do any manner of things and produce publications and have wonderful graphs and say this is the forecast growth and these things are in decline, but we don't control the supply, and the local circumstances will be hugely relevant. The capability of teachers, the plant and equipment available in the facility, the local intelligence that TAFEs and other providers have. So the collaboration, the partnership focus that we have is across the sector, first with industry and then into particularly the public sector for manufacturing. It's a bit noisy where I am, sorry.
Thanks, Paul. We can't hear all that noise, so you're doing well. I might ask the next question if that's okay, Helen. We've got one here that, so Mike talked about the need to push the boundaries and the challenges of pushing these boundaries. And Mike and John talked about the flexibility in delivery and assessment, those important, that important focus in the Manufacturing Centres of Excellence. So Stuart's asked, how do we develop flexibility in delivery and assessment when we have the national training package? There's prerequisites, and we know they're fairly specific and prescriptive, some might say, and I know there's some work to unpick that. But what are we doing in terms of, and I guess this would be an MCoE and a JSC kind of response, Helen, but I'll pass to you.
Thanks, Teresa. And thanks for the question. I think I probably will refer to Paul's expertise here when it comes to the navigation of the national training package. But the only thing I'll add there is that the MCoE is working with the education in the ecosystem. So we are seeking to support the education ecosystem and not replace some of those. So I think there are challenges, and as Paul mentioned, there's a lot that the Skills Alliance is doing in that space, but I'll hand over to Paul.
I'll say three quick things. The first is that we exist within the ecosystem and follow the same policy directions that everybody else does. So improving qualifications, national training products is hugely important to us. There are a number of projects that we're doing at the moment. I would be remiss if I didn't start with a mention of the review that we're doing of the MEM training package. That we're consulting on that now, and the goal there is to look to make sure that that training package does reflect current requirements as best as it can. Having said that, the second point I should make, and it is a very important point, different jobs and skills councils reflect their membership accordingly, and for us there are a number of qualifications that have a very tight alignment to occupations, and so they will always be, as the voice of industry, they will always be ones where we say, maybe not at the level of prerequisite, but possibly core and so on. There is a pathway. It has been developed over many, many years. It has strong support from industry and unions, and therefore that is what is proposed, and we're pretty upfront about it. I think the third point is just to go back to what I started with, and that is there is a role, an important role, that is supported by this whole architecture and significant public investment around training packages. And to the extent that work and jobs and technology is changing, clearly we will be working with a variety of stakeholders to make sure that the range of courses and qualifications line up to those jobs. And that may mean there is some change in the parameters around training packages.
And I just wouldn't mind, thank you, Paul, just referring to Mike and some of the MCoE areas there. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, great. Thanks there, Helen. I think it's a really good point about the assessment and the flexibility. I think with our NNRs, or non-nationally recognised micro-credentials, we do have a little ability to be more creative and innovative with the assessment and how they fit together in terms of that. So that is really a pilot area that we're looking at. I think we need to do that in the COE to trial those, and they're going particularly well for generative design. We've got design thinking and digital technologies at the moment that we're looking at that. So I think that is the pilot area to look at pushing the boundaries with the assessment and making it more innovative.
Thank you. Thanks. Now, Helen, I think we've got one easy question here. How are you going to support the micro-credentials with a digital badges system? What do people receive when they complete a micro-credential?
Yes, we are. So as Mike mentioned, we've got two types of micro-credentials that we're deploying, and there will be badges. And the idea is that there's portability in learning and stackability and a recognition process for students, and hopefully a flexible enough suite of educational offerings that students can either jump onto a pathway or can pick and choose if there are particular skills and particular areas that they want to grow. But yes, there will be a digital badging system, and I hope that some of the attendees today actually take up the opportunity to look at some of our educational offerings and enrol.
Thanks, Helen. Now, there's still a few other questions there, and we may not have time to answer all of them. We have discussed it, there is definitely a national vision for sharing the outcomes that come from the TAFE Centres of Excellence, including the Manufacturing Centres of Excellence. So rest assured, those outcomes will be coming to fruition as the work progresses, and already you're seeing some of those outcomes in the discussion today. It was a really valuable discussion, and you can see how that kind of ecosystem that you talk about is working together in making sure that we are going to make the most of this important sector, and also to resolve some of those wicked problems that we've been probably fighting for some time in ensuring this manufacturing sector can come to its full potential and reach the goals that we have for our economy and for the people who will be looking for their future work in this sector. So I would like to say a really big thank you to all of you. So thank you to Paul for coming in at the very last minute and doing a sterling job. So Paul from the Manufacturing Industry Skills Alliance, Jobs and Skills Council, and to the team from the TAFE New South Wales Manufacturing Centres of Excellence for a really insightful, practical discussion today. Thank you to the audience. The questions were excellent, and I'm sure you found the session interesting. Don't miss our next TAFE Talks event, which is the power of TAFE and industry collaboration to support apprenticeship commencement completions on the 18th of March from 2 till 3, and that will feature the Defence Centre of Excellence. So see you all then. Goodbye for now.